Was it a boring race? No, not in the commentary box. It wasn't really for me. But now, luckily, we have a full house to answer the question on the Inside Line F1 podcast. So let's not wait. Mr. F1 Stats Guru, was it a boring race for you or not?
Far from it. I think anticipation and strategy are all aspects of a great race. So, although we didn't see the sort of overtakes that people wanted at the start or somewhere further back, I think it was a great race.
You
I
you don't have
yeah.
the most fun
Convincing.
expression on your face, Kunal. No.
So I'll tell you what, I had a great time with you on the Hindi commentary broadcast with Fan Code. Okay. The race delay, which was that 1 hour long delay, gave me the chance to come in and join Chetan and you and talk. So that was a fun part. Identifying angles of the broadcast, which, as commentators, you all sort of don't get the space to do that because you're commenting so much on the picture. So that was a good part. I think a large part of the race was left in anticipation. And I always wonder how much of anticipation is enough. Is 44 laps enough? Is 4 laps enough? Is 14 laps enough? Is 36, 38, whatever number of laps enough? And beyond the point, it was just the McLaren's running away. And I wish the race had started 30 minutes earlier than it did because, we would have had more of a wet race than a dry race. Can you guys imagine all that talk about everyone taking a higher downforce setup because it's going to be wet in Spa? Of course, you never know how wet is wet, right? But eventually, by delaying it for 1 hour, the race control gave us almost a dry race, and the only thing we had to wait for was that crossover point where drivers go onto the slicks and then call it through to the end. So I think that the race could have been more interesting. Imagine if Lewis Hamilton didn't make those 11 positions up or whatever number of positions he did. Would it even have been? We would have had such few overtakes. And I don't mean we need overtakes, but we definitely didn't have battles on track.
Yeah, it was all washed away totally in a way. When we just started on the dry, like half the drivers having their high downforce configurations, leaving them stuck behind the others. Like case in point, Max Verstappen being stuck behind Charles Leclerc. Or who else did we have? We had a lot of drivers, didn't we? Who were on a high down. Yuki Tsunoda Sundaram. Poor chap. Best weekend of the entire season for him. Most confident he feels. Gets stuck behind in P11. It's
I think they also kind of messed up the strategy. I think they called him a little later than he would have expected. So that also kind of caused him to fall further down the order and finish outside the points. Quite a few actually people who have actually left with higher downforce setups were on the losing side of it, and even like the commentator said on the broadcast, if you were still with a low downforce setup, you might not lose out on a lot.
Yes.
Well, a
Yes.
gamble that backfired. And as Laura Mecchia said, Kunal, on the F1 TV interview, it's part of the game. He said that three times. So it is part of the game, I
it,
suppose.
it is part of the game. And the magic lap to pit on was lap 11. Okay. Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Nico Hulkenberg, and Pierre Gasly, the most experienced drivers on the grid. The drivers who had less to lose by making that stop as well. Okay. And everyone else followed suit later. So lap 12 was what Oscar Piastri pitted on, Max Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, you name it, and every single driver pitted on that lap. Okay. Now, unlucky lap number 13 was the lap Isaac Hadjar pitted on. Okay, was
Oh,
was the lap, I'll tell you, Antonelli pitted on, was the lap Ocon pitted on, was the lap so
Not
many
split it
other
on.
drivers, so it was that
Ah,
one
okay.
lap, right? And we spoke about it on the fan code broadcast as well. It's a long lap if you're on the wrong tire at the wrong time on the circuit, and that's literally what happened. So you don't
Isaac
think so?
Hadjar's race got wrecked.
Yeah,
He-
yeah.
he-
He said there was an issue with the car. Okay, and that's also one of the reasons why he knew he was carrying that issue into the race. So he's literally said, "Guys, don't judge me on what." I mean, I could have pitted on lap 11 and still lost out. But interestingly, it wasn't unlucky lap number 13 for Lando Norris, but that's the pace advantage of the McLarens and them then being so further up on the grid that it didn't matter that they did not sort of double stack with both their drivers. They thought that leaving one driver out on track was better than actually double stacking at that time.
But the question still remains: fun race or not? Yeah, yeah, no fun in the commentary box.
But
Fun in the commentary
that's
box for us,
always
as
right.
always. Yeah,
You guys have so many narratives, so many stories, so many facts, so many historical elements. It is Spa, and
we'll always have fun. Yeah, we
yeah,
won't get bored.
yeah. You guys could have gone on and on if there was a 4 hour gap to the race. And I think another thing the race showed us, and this was information that McLaren told Lando Norris, was till the race doesn't start. Okay, and I don't mean the formation lap; it's the start. The 3 hour race clock doesn't start either. Okay, so technically, by doing a formation lap and then saying, okay, this is not enough, and then bringing everyone back in, and that just meant that we could have gone. We had an extra hour on the 3 hour race clock as well. If you guys get what I'm saying, but anyway, I expect this to be cleaned out in the next World Motorsport Council meeting as well. They will say, the start time of the race and the end time of the race is what we're going to count as 3 hours. I expect them to do that.
Yeah, that I wish we could have started an hour earlier. I think at some point in this episode, Sundaram, we will dive into why wet weather tires don't work in Formula One and what our complaints with the cars are and what we can do to actually make sure that we can get more running in the wet. But before we do that, I want to ask you a question. Was this a race that Oscar Piastri won or Lando Norris lost? Because it can be looked at from both angles.
You can say that, especially on the first lap, when you're that close, when the whole grid is that bunched up together, you do have an advantage on the camel straight. But it's not always been the case. It's not a constant that whoever starts second is always going to win the race. That's not the case. Oscar had a brilliant launch behind Norris after the safety car went in, and Norris didn't have enough of this. I mean, he didn't have any slipstream, of course. So that was the decisive part of the race. But I also feel Norris could have clawed his way back after that, and there were more than a few issues. There were more than a few errors on his side, and also in the pit lane, if I'm not wrong. He had a longer than ideal pit stop as well. If all of those things would not have happened, he would have at least fought for the win, if not had it completely. That's very difficult to say explicitly that he would have won, but he would have been closer. I think the gap was around 5 seconds today. It would have been probably 1 or 2 seconds there, and we could have seen a good finish towards the end. But I feel Norris did lose out on those errors because of those errors.
I, I
Yeah,
would I would pick that it was Oscar Piastri who won that race. Oscar saw what happened to him yesterday with Max Verstappen, made a note, and his first message was, "Now I don't feel too bad about what happened to me yesterday." He played and overplayed and repeatedly played that scenario in his head. So he knew exactly what he was going to do at that restart. Can you imagine? There was a rolling restart, and he was actually annoyed that it wasn't a standing start. And as was Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton actually said that I don't know why they didn't do a standing start because it was actually very dry by that time. But anyway, we'll come to Hamilton later. But I think Oscar Piastri had played. He knew exactly what he was going to do. Lando Norris exiting La Source had an extra a bit of wheel spin, as we saw, a bit of a twitch as well. And then going up the hill, he knew he was going to be a sitting duck. DRS, no DRS. Slipstream, no slipstream. He just knew that was going to come. And the key question I'm going to ask you guys, if I can, is what was the right tire to be on in that second stint? Was it the medium or was it the hard? What do you guys think?
hard wasn't exactly a bad choice. Like I wouldn't blame the decision making, yeah, the decision making approach towards it, because theoretically it was the right tire to be on. 31 laps expected life. Chalo, let's make it 35. If Deg isn't as high as it looks, I think the process was right. I don't think Lando lost because of the tire, though. What do you reckon, Sundaram?
No, I don't suppose so as well. I don't suppose. I think it gave him an opportunity to push that much more because he was quite clearly pushing, as you could see in the last 10 laps or so, having locking his brakes time and again and going a little wide. I don't think so. He would have. I don't think so. That was the issue at all. In my opinion, those hards were good. If the race had started 10 laps, I mean 15 minutes earlier, it would have been a nice competition to see the mediums fall away, to see the hards come into play and all of those things. And even the old crossover between the wets and the hards, it would have been nice. But yeah, I don't think so that really mattered in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's tough to say, but I think Oscar Piastri pulled off that move, and then he knew he would get the priority in the pit stop, and he
Yeah, yeah,
made that pit
Yeah.
stop priority work. So what lost Norris was not just the overtake, but that he had to wait one extra
yeah.
lap, because the minute he went into the pits, he was 4 seconds off. He came out and he was 8.8 seconds off. So that gap to Piastri just doubled, and that was pretty much it. It didn't matter what tire he was on. Although I think, given that 19 other drivers were on the medium, okay, in a way, I think Norris being on the medium would have probably given him more to push, because the hard, when we saw him lock a few times entering into the La Source hairpin, it was also down to the tire just falling off the cliff, because the hard needed 20 plus degrees in track temperature, and track temperature was 21, 22 degrees, so it was very much on that limit. And when the cloud cover came in and everyone said, there's darker cloud cover, actually that would have cooled the track down furthermore. But I think fair play to McLaren. They realized that if this is a crossover race, they had worked with their drivers on who will take which tire at which stop. And it was a choice the drivers were making, because Oscar himself said, if I was second, I would have probably taken the hard as well, to try and get a bit of a different result coming in. But yes, all in all, I think it's the first time in 5 races that Lando Norris has not converted a pole position into a win, and the first time in 2025 that Lando Norris has not won a wet race. If we were to put it that way.
Yeah, it was a very fun battle, really fun battle. In the end, I think the most decisive driver won, and that's how I see it at the end. And Oscar's won that. He's now got a 16-point advantage over Lando Norris. That's incredible, honestly. 16 is huge. I think this is one of those days where we will look back and say, yeah, this is an important date in the context of this championship.
Yeah, it is, and we are heading into all. We are almost heading into the mid-season break, and like we've all seen in that movie, if you followed the movie Moneyball, it doesn't really matter how you do throughout the season. If you lose the last race or the last match of the year, it doesn't mean anything. So in that sense as well, even if you go into the mid-season break, you would ideally want to go into that break in a good position, probably win a race or at least be in the lead. So for Lando's sake, for him not to spend 4 weeks sitting and wondering how this championship is going to go, it's important that he has a good race in Hungary. And it would have been even better if he had won today, but that's not the case.
I would also, while Oscar was gutsy, Lando did run out of battery on that restart. And that's why Oscar actually did not overtake into the end of the Camel Straight. The overtake was finished halfway through the Camel Straight, if you guys
The start
remember.
of it,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 And that was all down to both drivers were told, and as you guys know, I'm always on the radio channel. Both drivers were told that the overtake is available. It just so happened that Oscar used up more of that battery behind the safety car while he was
Yeah.
doing the restart, and Oscar just had all of it to use to pull that one overtake off. So a lot of this was also how the drivers knew what they were going to do under that restart, and maybe Oscar was more decisive in all the tools that he had, not just the fact that he would have the slipstream. So it was more than just having that slipstream, in my view, for Oscar to make that overtake. And just my word on whether it's the hard or the medium, I just liked that there was a bit of variability in the field at that time, and that they were trying something different. But Esteban Ocon did 51 laps on the C3 tire, which was the medium tire today as well, at the 2023 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And That was pretty much, I think, the whole race that he did on that lap, or that single lap of tire. And of course, degradation values are different for both the races. Conditions were different as well in terms of track temperature and air temperature and so on. But it's just what we saw happen. So I did not believe that the medium was way out of whack, as some of the commentators were trying to make it out to be, Soumil.
Yeah, and I wish somewhere I wish there was more deg on the medium somewhere. Just it would have made the race a lot more fun, because imagine 18 drivers panic pitting at the end and one Lando Norris being the only person who got it right. Those are the kind of stories we love to watch in Formula 1, right? One great decision that ultimately gets you a win. It's a very fitting Las Vegas GP story at some point, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Piastri won, 16-point advantage. This could be a big, big moment in the championship. And I think it's a good time
There was
for.
one. There was one big move that did happen, which was on lap 11 when Hamilton called, doing this the crossover to the slicks. It was so big a move, Soumil, that of course we know what he did. He made all those overtakes. He sort of went from pit lane to finishing seventh as he did. But uh, you know, Max Verstappen was told on the radio post race, Hamilton stopped one lap earlier than everyone else for dry tires. It looked like he got a big win out of that. Since you said the Las Vegas moment of gambling on a race tire strategy. So imagine Max Verstappen was informed of this post race as well. And I think it was also Pierre Gasly who benefited big time. I mean, imagine you're racing for the team that's last on the grid. Okay. Gasly scoring that 20th point for Alpine, pitted on the 11th lap, and boom, he finished in those points. He was able to keep everyone else behind him as well. And Gasly now jumps Lance Stroll for 12th in the Drivers' Championship. Remember, Gasly's racing for Alpine, which is 10th and last, whereas Lance Stroll is with Aston Martin, that is 8th fastest in the Drivers' Championship. So clearly, just how good a season Gasly is having in 2020.
And all 20 of them by Pierre Gasly himself alone.
One man army. One man. I thought Aston Martin was the one man army, but here we go.
We don't talk about that team today because that's the only team not to score points today. All other 9 teams have scored except Aston Martin. Imagine.
All 9.
They had
Wow.
that worst qualifying result yesterday, and arguably one of their worst races as well in a long, long time.
There were 9 teams that scored points. Yeah, that's true. I actually counted them as 8. But very interesting if you were to also discuss this by virtue of drivers being prioritized in the pits. It was also down to, like, why are there 9 drivers or 9 teams who scored
Eight
points?
teams, 8 teams. Haas didn't. Haas didn't
Haas
score.
didn't as well. Yeah, Bearman was 11th for the 4th consecutive race. Okay, but anyway, the interesting point here that I'm trying to make here is, so Bearman pitted on lap 12 and Ocon went on lap what lap? Lap 13. So that was it. They were one lap too late with Ocon, and Bearman just got there. But
Hang
8 teams
on.
got points because, sorry.
Wait a second. Bearman 11th. What are you saying? Wasn't Yuki 11th for the longest time? What happened?
Yuki, I don't know what happened. It seems like he made a no. No, Yuki's finished 13th.
He was 11th. He was
Any,
behind Pierre, I remember.
yeah, he was. He
Okay,
was chasing
wow.
him down. But Hulkenberg, with the fresher rubbers, probably overtaken him. And maybe Bearman also pulled up a move on him at some point, is my
Wow, I
guess.
missed it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it probably wasn't shown on the feed either, because I'm sure you'd remember that. You'd have called the comms on that,
Yeah,
Soumil.
exactly.
But
I was so
my
surprised.
point is, if we were to just break it down, Verstappen in the points, okay, but Tsunoda isn't 13th. Russell in the points, but Antonelli 16th isn't. Albon in the points, but Sainz isn't. So technically, it was just the McLaren and the Ferraris that scored points with both cars. Bortoleto in the points, Hulkenberg isn't. Gasly in the points, Colapinto isn't. So a very interesting phenomenon in this race, I would say, where just because you waited one more lap to pit your and driver who was second in the queue, or not in the prioritized position, you've not scored points with your second driver. And interestingly, Hulkenberg was ahead of Bortoleto. We saw on the radio, on the world
Yep.
feed, he said he asked for team orders, he got team orders, and then Hulkenberg had to give way, and Hulkenberg just chewed up his tires, which is why he made that second stop. So that's the only anomaly there, why Bortoleto, who pitted later, 1 lap later than Hulkenberg, still ended up scoring 2 points for Sauber.
Yeah, it could have been a double points for Sauber at one point. They were all very close to each other. I was really looking forward to that because that would have meant some movement between them and Racing Bulls in the constructors, but that didn't work out. So sad.
But the good thing is to see actually Sauber actually being one of those few teams or drivers to actually make the jump onto the slicks, which means that they're making good calls when it comes to switching tires. So we've seen that very. We saw it in Silverstone as well. At a very crucial juncture, they switched their tires, and here as well. So I don't know how much of an influence that comes down to from John Wheatley, but it's great for the team.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of it is down to Hulkenberg, isn't it? Because at Silverstone, we saw three times he made the right judgment
Yeah,
call.
yeah,
Here itself, it was him who got it right, not Gabby. So I'd say driver has a big role to play.
and experience.
I know I said nobody double stacked, but Sarang, our producer, has actually clearly said, guys, it was Mercedes who double stacked. But I think they could double stack because Russell was
Yeah.
running in the top five and Antonelli was running in the bottom five at that point of time. But very interesting race if you see it as a purist. Okay, but for a sprint weekend, which brings 10% more viewers and so on, I think there was more time spent in anticipation of things rather than not. But Lewis Hamilton did definitely entertain us. I would say that was a big one. He pulled off moves on everyone he could pull off moves on. He overtook Sainz, overtook Colapinto, overtook Hulkenberg, overtook Gasly, overtook Stroll, overtook a lot of people. And the only person he couldn't overtake
Fernando
was
Alonso.
Alexander Albon.
Yes, Alexander Albon. Yes,
I
let's
missed
come
that
back.
joke.
Wishful thinking. Wishful thinking.
I said
Or,
Fernando Alonso.
or is it 2007 all over again?
Yes, yeah. Let's come back to Albon. Yes,
Yeah. So anyway, there was Alex Albon, who was actually Albon started the weekend saying, "I'm probably going to pick up a power unit penalty." Literally, that was one of his first statements. Okay, and Sarika is here. Yes, all three of us are here. You asked for it
finally.
yesterday, and
Yes.
we delivered today. The pod gods have blessed us. Yes. Exoteric, a big hello to you as well. I know you're in like minus 10 hours from Oslo, some really strange time zone. Strange just because it's strange for me. But yeah, so that
Maybe in
was that.
Fiji. I don't know. Yeah, where is Exoteric? That's a good question, right? We should ask. We should play a game of GeoGuessr. Where is Exoteric? Where do we think he is? Minus 10 hours from Oslo. We'll check. We'll check.
Australia.
Australia?
No, that's plus 10. Minus 10 is going backwards towards America,
okay.
and that side.
Minus 10 to maybe
California.
Hawaii? California? Yeah, could be.
I don't remember, but he has written and told us, or she has written and told us. I'm not sure. But anyway,
Okay.
Lewis Hamilton's overtakes. Sarang also says that Alonso was probably the first guy Lewis Hamilton overtook. But anyway, that was big overtaking.
Alonso's last. Alonso started last.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. And then, yeah, any other observations that you guys had? Because
Boring race that way. Now that you're
we
asking
just
me.
covered everything in
We've covered
23
everything in
minutes.
23
Yeah.
minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've not touched upon Charles Leclerc. Come on, guys, please. I think
Let's
he
go.
needs some airtime on his own because he did a brilliant job yesterday in terms of qualifying. And as we've seen in the F1 movie, sometimes you lose in qualifying and you win in the race. But quite clearly, if you sometimes win in qualifying, you also win in the race. It put him in that position to actually be in P3. And I think he did a splendid job. It's not easy keeping someone like a Max Verstappen in your mirrors throughout the race. So it takes me back to the sprint in Brazil where we could see Verstappen chasing Leclerc for the McLarens ahead of him. And he would say, Leclerc, Charles, you're making so many mistakes. And I don't think so that was the case today as well. Apart from the few occasions where his tires were literally shot, Apart from that, I think Leclerc did a very good job keeping Verstappen 1 to 2 seconds behind him throughout the race, and take yet another podium for Ferrari.
I think so, and this is where Max Verstappen would have hoped he would have had that low downforce rear
Yeah.
wing going, because Max just did not have the straight line speed to make that overtake. But for once, we had a proper Leclerc versus Verstappen battle. Okay,
After a
Mm.
long
typically
time.
typically we've seen Max take the battle to the McLarens, but since they've taken that step forward, and I think Ferrari's taken that step in to say, you know what, Max, I'm just going to battle you, because then you don't get to battle the McLaren. So it was a bittersweet moment, because in the opening laps, you could see the McLarens pull away. Max was really trying to get and join that battle, but Leclerc just stepped in and said, you know what, that's not happening. I'm going to be the one moving in. One of So it was Leclerc's third consecutive podium at Spa. He usually goes really well around this circuit. Okay, but Charles Leclerc now has the same number of podium finishes as Max Verstappen, which is five. And
This year.
Max actually, of course, has two race wins. Okay, but Leclerc
Hmm.
has no race wins but five podium finishes. And yeah, and Max has, of course, got just one podium in the last six races.
So Leclerc has three in the last five. Verstappen has one in the last six.
There
No,
you go.
Interesting.
Max has a podium. Where was it? In I'm forgetting. It was 3 races ago. I just put a stat out on that.
Yeah, Max had a podium in Australia. He won in Japan. He had a podium in Saudi Arabia. He won in Imola. He was second in Canada. That was the last race. He was second.
Second in Canada. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So for the
And,
first time, actually, Max Verstappen's uh, since he became a world champion, Max has gone 3 races without a podium. The last time that
Wow.
happened was 5.5 years ago, over 2,000 days ago. Crazy.
Enough to quit the team?
Not yet. Not yet.
not yet. But since we are on stats, Russell, since his race win in Canada, okay, he's not been on the podium. In fact, fourth is his best place finish that he's had. Okay, sorry,
Fifth.
fifth is the best finish that he's had. George Russell, he's finished fifth, 10th, fifth. Okay, so maybe in Hungary he's going to be 10th again. Who knows? And Alexander Albon, after three races of retirements, literally. So he retired in Spain, he retired in Canada, he retired in Austria. He was eighth in Silverstone, but he came home sixth in Spa. It's literally his fourth top six finish of the season, and he's slowly bringing his season back into contention. He's eighth, so he's the best of the rest of the midfield drivers, and he's just about 9 points away from Kimi Antonelli. Maybe we could also speak about Antonelli.
Oh, seriously, I
Do
think
you want to?
No, why not?
because if you actually see, Kimi's not scored in the last 4 races, and he's scored once in the last 8 races, and that was his podium in Canada. So it really looks like the way the season started off for him was much more brighter than it seems, and lots of interest and scrutiny around how this young kid does. It's kind of washed away over the last several rounds, and seriously, this is the point where Toto puts an arm around him and tries to get him to be a little bit more motivated going forward, because if this is how even Hungary ends, it's going to end in a spiral throughout the mid-season break. So Antonelli really needs to have a good race in Hungary, try and find some confidence, some momentum. Otherwise, it's going to look very bad for him. This is how Formula One is, because if you're in your rookie season and you're right in a Mercedes car first up, it can get very difficult, and then that lack of experience is probably showing. But probably his results are not looking very great, unfortunately.
Yeah, and a lot of those not finishes were also engine retirements
Yeah.
that he's had. He had it in Imola. He crashed into Max in Austria. I think Spain and Silverstone were also engine related stuff. So it's a mix of just being able to tell him to continue to believe in himself and go there. And I think in qualifying he was just slow, and drivers have such moments. And this is Spa, and he's won at Spa before. So it's just about being there with him and not giving up on him. And I'm pretty sure these conversations around Max coming to Mercedes are also getting to him, because he's of course been dreaming that I'm going to be the next Max Verstappen. I'm going straight from Freca to F2 to F1. I'm going to make those big jumps and win those big moments. And then suddenly you get there and you realize it's a different beast altogether. So it's a lot of mental management needed for him as well, I would say. And I'm hoping he's able to bounce back in Hungary.
Yeah, he better. He better. All I'm hoping for is just a solid race from him. That's all. Nothing special. Just something to bring the confidence back, as Sundaram was mentioning. But yeah, tough performance from Kimi Antonelli this weekend. Not much more to cover, right, guys? 30 minutes in, I think I can now answer your question. Yeah, boring. This is an okay race. Not, I mean, usually we'd go for 1 hour easily.
Yeah.
Today, anything beyond this would be stretching. And our producer has already told us no going beyond 30 minutes. So we will adhere to him. And yeah, we will call this an end. Yeah, I just need to this calling it the end of an episode on the inside line is a bit tricky. It's like bidding and saying it's over in the auction, because there's always someone who has a point at the very end. So guys, any points at the end before we can say so? And it's a risky question because I say this when I say this, because Kunal will always have 40 other stats waiting, and Sundaram will always be working on something really cool, which will then bring out right at the very end of the episode. And then it's me and the producer usually like, we've shot overboard by 7 minutes. So guys, have we got anything right now?
Last point, since
Of
I have
course.
to keep up with the tradition.
Of
right?
course, of course.
Lando Norris's hards, while technically were supposed to last longer, give performance for a longer stint than Oscar Piastri, he was actually suffering from front locking, and he was told to protect his front right. And this is how fair McLaren is with both their drivers. First point is Oscar knew that Lando had the option to take the hard, so it wasn't that he was suddenly blindsided into that. Okay, when Oscar was on the medium and Lando took the hard. So that was point number one. Point number two, when McLaren told Lando Norris to protect his front right, they told Oscar Piastri immediately that Norris is suffering from front locking. Okay, so while they are being fair and giving each driver equal treatment, they are also helping one driver try and get a competitive advantage over the other, because they're returning the favor with both the drivers. And I think Norris's hard was actually, now that we've had 32 minutes, 33 minutes of ruminating on this as well, was actually the wrong tire to be on. That's my bold guess as we end this episode.
I have no closing remarks, okay? Especially after a race like that for an Alonso fan. Please don't expect any sort of closing remarks from me. The only thing I might have to start doing right now is book tickets for Abu Dhabi next year, because it's looking bad for Aston Martin at this point. So I hope there's a miracle of some sort, like it happens in the F1 movie. Otherwise, I have to book tickets for Abu Dhabi next year.
Next year, this year, who knows?
Not this year, please. Next
Who
year.
knows? Who knows? Who knows? Just saying. Just saying. You only have one life. Might as well.
You don't get the context, do you? When I say I'm
Yeah,
booking
he
tickets
didn't
for
get
Abu
the
Dhabi.
context.
No, I know,
yet.
I know. But you never know. You never know.
Okay.
Nothing's been announced. But you're going to be going to watch a race this year, so you're going to get to witness El Padre once, at least. At least. But yeah, for us, it's time to say goodbye.
That's it.
Not much. Only 30 minutes of talking this time. Yeah, blame Formula One for that, not us. It's not our problem. But Hungarian GP comes up next week. So we will be back in a few days as well. So make sure you do the needful. Subscribe to the Inside Line F1 podcast. Notification button. Yeah, share button as well, to make sure that you can share this episode with all of your other friends and family members who love Formula One and would love a concise analysis of what the race is. Just give them a shout, and we'll see all of you and them back live to talk about the Hungarian GP on the Inside Line F1 podcast. Till then, folks, enjoy whatever is left to enjoy of this race weekend, and we'll catch you in a bit. Bye bye.